Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and in this bonus episode of Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, we speak with Wanda Sizemore. She's an onboarding specialist at Envision Strategic Partners. She started her career in Preneed sales. She spent a long time at Homesteaders and now has taken on this project. We'll let her tell you all about it. The reason we're speaking with her today is we want to entice you to come to our upcoming webinar. At 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 10th, the Kates-Boylston HR and Leadership Forum will present Balancing Care and Growth, Retaining Talent and Strengthening Preneed Programs in Funeral Homes. In addition to Wanda, Spencer Larkin, who is the co-founder and CEO of Envision Strategic Partners, will also be giving a presentation, but we wanted to give you a little sneak preview of what Wanda will be doing. So let's talk to Wanda, and I will catch you on the other side with some closing thoughts. So you came in a very interesting way to your position. So can you talk a little bit about how you got where you are today? And then we'll go into what your presentation is likely to look like.
It was developed from my passion and actually knowing that there was a significant gap in some of what Preneed training required. I started the profession in 1997, worked in a funeral home and sold Preneed. I enjoyed it a lot, so I was invited to help other Preneed people. I actually ended up recruiting, hiring, and training. And then an opportunity came open at Homesteaders Life Company. And I applied for that opportunity thinking it would just help my career. The difference was I had always done business to consumer, that I was now doing business to business. So I had a lot to learn, but truly enjoyed all those years working at Homesteaders as well. I was hired as the director for the Southeast region. So I had a lot of responsibility, but the last position that I had at Homesteaders, I was in it for 6 years, was the director of training and development. And that's really what I must be passionate about because I always find myself there in the end. And I retired 2 years ago and I wasn't quite ready to stop working. And a call came to me. They probably didn't know it at the time, but it was a blessing because I live in Indianapolis, and in the wintertime, my husband and I winter in St. Petersburg, Florida. So you can't really have a job if you live in two completely different states.
It can be tough.
So this call came, and it was exactly what I wanted to do. And it was virtual. So I started with Envision late summer, have been working to really hone, number one, my skills on training and onboarding again, but really making sure that people have the right start when they start in selling Preneed, because that truly, I believe through the years, that truly was a missing part of training Preneed people. So I'm very, very thankful to work at Envision. And like I said, it came out of nowhere and it was just perfect.
Just broadly, what does Envision do?
Envisioning is a marketing company and they help funeral homes with their Preneed programs. Everything from recruiting, hiring, training, marketing, motivating people. I love the motivation that comes from Envision. I watch the Preneed people. They thrive on it. We're all competitive in this.
Right.
So they totally thrive on the motivation. So that's one of the key things. But Envision is a third-party marketing company that helps funeral homes with their Preneed programs.
And so we're going to get to hear from you in the long form on December 10th, which is in just a couple of weeks. We're recording this just before Thanksgiving. We're all going to go have turkey, and then we're going to go right back into it, make one great big push for the new year. And I guess yours is coming in at a great time because as people are getting ready to get their new year underway, you can help them understand why they should think about retention and how they should think about retention, especially when it comes to Preneed. So can you give me like an idea of what you'd like people to take away from your talk?
Building the program is really important. But within the program, like I said, the motivation is really important, but meeting the goals of the funeral home are important, and meeting the goals of the actual salesperson or the counselor. That's really critical as well. So knowing what those goals are and creating that roadmap for them so they know exactly what amount of activity needs to go into it so that they are successful. And then supporting it with the training, identifying, where they need help at instead of just thinking, where they need help at. If you take a real close look at some of the yield points being, how many people do they have to talk to set an appointment? How many presentations do they have to do to actually close a sale? Those yield points, they help me understand where the training is needed. So that's a really big part of what makes a program successful. And I believe that any employee of any company really wants to be, for lack of better words, trained for their next job.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to train them for their next job. But in doing so, you actually retain them. They don't want to go anywhere else.
Well, because you feel like if you feel like you're getting better at things, so I'm an older person myself. And from my perspective, I want to make sure that I'm not just coasting, because I've seen older people who coast and I don't want to be one of them. And I don't want to feel like I can't do anything but coast. So the opportunity to learn more and to get better at stuff is still exciting to me. And I guess that's kind of what you're getting at?
Tony, that's very much so what I'm getting at. I really believe that, again, I'm not ready to not work. You're not ready to not work. But don't you think the career that we've had, here I am asking you the questions, but don't you think with the careers that we have had, the passion for what we do and passing it on to the next generation is important?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm in a weird position where the next generation also kind of knows stuff that I don't. So
Me too.
There's a lot of back and forth there. But when it comes to smaller funeral homes, I was curious about one of the questions that you will almost certainly get is, I don't have a pre-need program, or whoever's not on a call that day is doing the pre-need. So
right.
that's a real difficulty with smaller funeral homes.
Yes. And, having the first 10 years at Homesteaders, I had the experience of going into a lot of the type of funeral homes that you're talking to. Having a really active program didn't necessarily fit what they wanted or what they needed, but you can still have programs and be not necessarily passive, but not as assertive and not as much marketing, making sure that your community knows, what else you do for them. Because all of the funeral homes that I've ever worked in, they do something for the entire community. And that outreach is really important. And while they're doing that outreach, they're also letting people know, that they can help people in advance of their own personal death to actually come in and make some arrangements. It still never stops surprising me how many people don't know they can do that.
And why don't they? What do you think the bar is?
Why don't the funeral homes, or why don't the people?
Both, now that you bring it up.
Okay. With the funeral homes, I feel like, or I thought that oftentimes, more often than not, they would be concerned about having one person that did that outreach to the community being maybe too salesy.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is our job is to teach them not to be salesy. Our job is to teach them how to offer this service to everybody in their community. And people want it once they know that they can do it.
I was just doing a report on a Japanese funeral home that has a coffin cafe, is what they call it. And they have coffins open in the cafe, and you go in there and you lay down and you think about your death and you think about what you want. And that's not directed at me. I'm 54. That is directed at 20, people in their 20s and people in their 30s. And I think a lot of times we're shooting at we're trying to convert people that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I think that there are interesting ways to get across to people who are in their 20s and 30s who are actually even more open to thinking about, since their death is so far away, it's easy to think about what they're going to do.
This is true. This is true. And it is a topic that people don't care to think about. And I think I've heard of some groups like the one you're suggesting, the Coffin Cafe, those types of groups. And they're just for awareness. But oftentimes that awareness is what causes people to think of their own mortality. Actually, during the COVID pandemic, everybody thought that they could die. Everybody thought they could die. It didn't matter how old you were. I feel like after that took place, well, I don't feel like, I know that I was still working at Homesteaders when that happened. And I know that our sales increased significantly after the initial part of the pandemic.
Right.
And again, I think it was because people started thinking of their mortality. So we have to encourage them to think about that and encourage them to plan for that.
Excellent. And that is all I have for you, unless you have something else for me. Is there something I should have asked and didn't, or something that you thought you'd get the opportunity to say, but I didn't provide it?
The only thing I'd like to leave folks with is that this is changing. I started in 1997, and I feel very, very fortunate to have worked with two really good companies that wanted to make sure that I was continuing to get better at what I did. And in doing so, I got to attend a lot of conferences and, participated in a lot of conferences. I was on a lot of committees, and all of those things help me understand funeral service today. And the one thing that hasn't changed, in my opinion, is that when somebody dies, somebody else is in pain. But everything else changes.
Right.
And we have to continue to not only stay up with change, but be able to see what's going to happen in the future.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait for your presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Tony, for the call.
The opportunity to ask an expert about their expertise is one of my favorite parts of the job, because I'm like, hey, you're so much smarter than me about this. And then you get to see them answer it and learn from it. And it feels effective, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Anyway, please join us. You can register in the show notes. Once again, it is the Kates-Boylston HR and Leadership Forum, beginning at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 10th. 2024. Can't wait to see you there. All the information in the show notes. You can register, and even if for some reason you don't make it, we'll send you a copy of the video for you to watch at your leisure. All right, that will do it for this bonus episode. I am Tony Russo once again, and we will catch you next time.